Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to another Financial Services Club webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, creative problem solving using TRIZ. And we have as our guest today, Karen Gadd. Karen, hello.
Hi.
Karen is an expert in the subject, and Karen and I have known each other for a particularly long time. I think we were about 32 years starting originally with something called Music at Oxford, which Karen used to run. And that creativity has taken her into the creativity to do with innovation. And she's going to be exploring with us today one of the most fascinating areas, which is how do you innovate within a controlled process, and delivering to us a lot of the thinking and learning that the Russians have developed over the years. We couldn't do this without our sponsors, and so as ever, may I say thank you to our sponsors. It's been a delight that they've allowed us to range so widely and freely across a number of subjects. But I think it's going to be very interesting to combine some of the aspects of the scientific methods advocated by the Russians in this space to areas that our audience is all quite keen about, which is very much the idea of financial services and technology services, learning how to innovate and develop. So we're going to have Karen's going to address us for about 20 to 25 minutes. We have sufficient time for questions. Please, I've sent a note to you, do use the question submission function in GoToWebinar, and that would be absolutely fantastic. So from here, if you don't mind, Karen, I'm going to hand control over to you in a split second, and then you can drive the machinery here as we go through. So Karen, just bear with me a moment. Karen, you have control.
Well, I'm going to be talking about TRIZ, and TRIZ is really exciting because it helps us all think like a genius, understand our challenges and find the best ways forward. I've been doing it for over 20 years, and I've never found anything as exciting as this for helping me really understand what's going on and actually solve problems. It's Russian, which is a clue in the name. TRIZ is an acronym, Teoria Regenia Izabetatelski Zadach. Apologies to anyone Russian for that bad English. It means theory of inventive problem solving. It's not a theory. It's actually a big toolkit. It's capability. But having said it's a big toolkit, it's a bit like learning chess. There are lots of different pieces. They overlap. You play them in different ways according to what you're up against on problems. And like chess, you can learn what it does and start doing it immediately. And the more you do it, the better you get. And I have never seen it fail. So we use Clive Goddard's cartoons. He's an Oxford cartoonist because cartoons are very trizzy. They're very much about understanding what's going on at a glance, a lot of information at a glance. And that's what TRIZ is about. TRIZ is about keeping it simple so you can see. So although the cartoons, some people think it makes us look very strange, we feel they help enormously. So this cartoon describes Oxford Creativity's life. We get called in at the last minute when people try everything on problem solving, even when they know TRIZ. They've got other toolkits they try, and then they ring us and say, can you come now? Our share price depends on it. We've got IP, crisis, and our teams fly out sort of at a moment's notice and help people actually solve what seems to them to be unsolvable problems. And when I say help them, we get them to solve their own problems. So when people are stuck, TRIZ will always unstick them. We've never seen it fail. So we use our biblical analogies very carefully. This is David and Goliath, which nobody seems to mind. And that's what TRIZ feels like. This tiny technique slays really big problems. So we always say to people, don't forget. So TRIZ is for everyone. It's not just for technical community. It was made by engineers for engineers. This book, TRIZ for Dummies, it's actually written by my daughter, who ran the company for 12 years before she left and went off to Oxford University. And because she's a music graduate and a psychologist, she didn't have any sort of technical bent on this. So all the examples are very general. And people say it's a wonderful, wonderful way of getting into TRIZ. And it's very much about Oxford TRIZ. So it really works for all kinds of problems. Oxford TRIZ has helped teams in almost every industry. We've worked with our local politicians, our county council. We work with R&D teams. We work with companies all over the world. And quite often when they've got a technical problem, they said, could you solve a very general problem too? So I went out to Shanghai to do some work on picture blades, on wind turbines. And they said, could we also spend a day looking at how China could charge more, because we're seen as a sort of cheap option and we want to stop being seen as a cheap option. They brought all kinds of party officials in. That was a very fascinating day. And they found some new ways of looking at it. So it works on absolutely anything. This is my book. TRIZ is very much a niche of a niche, so it's hardly a bestseller, though it's been translated into lots of languages. And it was part of the beginning of my work to make TRIZ really easy to learn, really fast to get going on. So I was very determined that people should pick it up very easily. And it's called TRIZ for Engineers, but really it works for everyone, although TRIZ for Dummies has much less technical examples in it. So what is TRIZ? Well, mostly it's about getting things into your brain. It gives you brain training. So you know there are patterns, and once you've learnt them, you follow them. So when you're up against a problem, you use the TRIZ. So the systematic thinking tools make you enormously creative and innovative, which goes against much of the Western thinking, and really gives you a positive attitude to problem solving. So once you know you've got TRIZ, you can solve anything. And there's been lots of university research at London and Sheffield University seeing why TRIZ has made such a difference to whole populations in companies like Rolls-Royce. And what TRIZ gives you is it helps you know what you know. So when you've got a complex challenge, lots of things going on, and the team all knows slightly different things, you do the TRIZ and it maps everything together. So you can understand what's going on, you can see the ways forward, but you can also communicate that to others. And it's extremely logical. And it's logic that I particularly like, because if we can really make it as simple as possible, we can see the ways forward. So TRIZ has some really simple golden rules. The most famous is probably the 40 inventive principles, 40 ways of solving a contradiction. The world has always known 40 ways of solving a contradiction, but before the TRIZ community worked on it, nobody had put all that together. So if I see teams who say you can't take something big and make it really small, and I hold up a ship in a bottle and say, yes, we can, and we've been doing it for hundreds of years. And here's this list which will nudge you to remind you how to do that when you come across a contradiction in a problem. We also have the 8 TRIZ trends. Those are just 8 simple patterns that all systems follow as they move into the future. So if you want to predict the likely future of processes, systems, anything, then TRIZ shows you how. And it's just things like everything's going to get better, everything's going to use less human involvement, everything's moving towards nanotechnology. You can learn this part of the toolkit in 1 hour. It's very standalone, and start using it on your next generation immediately. 76 standard solutions are something we need in lockdown. There are 17 ways of detecting and measuring something that humankind knows. Very important at the moment. 24 ways of dealing with harm, 35 ways of dealing with insufficiency. And they are really straightforward and simple. And then we have the effects database. You want to answer a how-to question? You just look it up. The TRIZ community worked for years to put this together to us. When it arrived in the early 90s, it was really expensive, about $10,000 or euros. It's now free. There's one on our website. There's lots of ways of using this, but it gets hit every day, hundreds of times from all over the world. People use it everywhere. So, does it work for financial services? Well, this is a quote from a lovely man who I met at a conference, who came up to me and said, you and I are the only interesting people here. And I thought, that's a good line. And he came on a TRIZ workshop because he didn't believe that TRIZ would have anything that he didn't know. He was a real lean Six Sigma expert. And he said, TRIZ cannot have something extra. And after the 5 days, he said, this is astonishing. It's got something completely different, something additional and useful to what I do. And he said he wasn't normally impressed, but he was impressed. So impressing the unimpressible was great. And so this is the point that John was making, that other toolkits have wonderful land of problem understanding and land of problem solving, but in between is a gap. And that gap is almost the most important step in problem solving. So you get to the point where you have to actually solve the problem, find ideas, find concepts, and all the toolkits say brainstorm here, find a solution, and they put a cloud or an exclamation mark. Whereas with TRIZ, instead of doing something random, sorry, next slide, having to jump over the gap, it actually provides bridges. So TRIZ means that you're not left. You can actually just cross the bridge. And this takes a day, 2 days, 3 days. All our problem solving, even on the hardest problems, are just in a few days. Because it always astonishes me, no matter how important the problem, people still are very stingy about the time they will give to solving problems. So doing it effectively and fast is very important. So this cartoon, I think, really sums up TRIZ. It's the plain English group becomes this long name. When I did my engineering degree, I went to Imperial College and did mechanical engineering. I felt they took a lot of information and made it logical and simple so we could take it in. When I did my MBA at London Business School, and that was before, a long time ago, before MBAs were expensive or even well known, I felt they took quite a small, some of the subjects took quite a small amount of information and padded it out a bit. I'm very keen that you get to the heart of things, and that's very much what TRIZ helps you do. So TRIZ has a number of simple steps. One of them is you should really understand the idea between a concept and an idea. So a concept is something like the wheel. And if you're the person who's invented the wheel, the first thing you'll come up against is a grumpy old git saying, that's no good. But behind that person, there'll be a whole team of people saying, wow, I could use that concept in this way. And so TRIZ, what TRIZ gives you are concepts, concept triggers for your solutions. You then have to turn them into ideas. And so the cleverer you are, the better you'll be at TRIZ. And TRIZ doesn't say, do that. It shows you how. So the prism of TRIZ, keep clicking, Michael, is it shows you how. And it's very much about converging and diverging. You take your problem and you say, is there a similar problem in the world? If I reduce it down to a very simple and conceptual way, can I see, how it maps onto other problems? And those other problems have probably got solutions. And can I take those solutions and map them onto my, and create solutions myself? So the first, if you take somebody like James Dyson, really famous inventor, if you look him up on Wikipedia, he says, by chance, I found my best ideas. If you did it with the prism of TRIZ, you'd find them in 10 minutes. Mr. Dyson wanted to create a vacuum cleaner that didn't use a bag to collect the dirt. In conceptual terms, he wanted to know how to separate air from dirt. Instead of waiting for the chance moment in a factory when he saw cyclone separation, he could have looked it up and got that and all the other ways the world knows to separate dirt from air. Taking cyclone separation and turning it into a working vacuum cleaner, that's the hard bit. He said it took him 1,000 trials. I suspect with TRIZ, he would have done it faster. We go through the prism on any problem. We did a problem with Buckingham County Council who wanted to save money. They were really up against it and they decided to throw out some of their basic overheads and buy in external services. And they were going to cut their legal department and just use a commercial company. And the legal department came to us and said, how can we stop this happening? We've got all these toolkits, we do lean, we have leaned as far as we can lean, we've saved money, we're efficient, it's still not good enough, they're still going to cut us. So we said, well, look, in conceptual terms, you want to know how you can actually not be cut, perhaps not by saving money, but perhaps contributing. Does anyone else in the world do that? Is there already a solution? And they said, yes, in Kent. Something called the Kent model was very much about getting their legal department to actually earn some money as well. So we stepped back and we looked at all their customers with them. We spent 3 days with them using the TRIZ tools, and they saw that many of their customers, the fire service, schools, parish councils, hospitals, all the people they were working with were actually buying legal services from other people. So they persuaded them to switch to them. And in a year, their legal department went from being an overhead to not costing anything. And then a year later, were actually contributing. And that was in the FT in 2014. And they didn't mention TRIZ, but they certainly did it with TRIZ. So TRIZ was not invented on a Californian beach by a couple of really smart guys saying, "Oh, let's think up some innovation tools." TRIZ comes from years of work, and it started in the Baku patent office in 1946 with this genius man, Genrich Altschuler. And he tried to distill all human knowledge, and I think he succeeded. He looked at all the patents, all the scientific papers, and said that there are very few fundamental problems and fundamental solutions in the world. And he worked with teams of engineers and scientists. Apparently, they had more time in the Soviet Union in isolation to work on these things. And they found those 4 lists. They really did distill all human knowledge. So what they did is they took all the patents, all the scientific papers, any good solution, and say, these are ideas, let's turn them into concepts. And so we got those 4 lists just distilled down, and that's what we teach. Every single one of those is illustrated with a cartoon. And when I say there's 100, it's not because I can't add up. The 8, the 40, and the 76 really overlap. They're really overlapping lists, and there's about 100 answers to anything in the world, and you can learn them in your first day of quiz. So the trends are simply telling us that things move on and get better, and they go through stages. So this is a sort of illustration of IT in my lifetime. I started off programming on punch cards, and the computers at Imperial look like the grey picture. And I've seen the excitement build. I think we're in a particularly stupid time at the moment. We don't know what a really good system is going to be, but I've got a laptop, I've got a phone, I've got a Kindle, I've got a tablet, all duplicating each other's work. What that final cartoon should look like, I don't know, but it will be something much better than we're working with at the moment, and TRIZ is showing us how we can do that. Ways of overcoming insufficiency. I expect in lockdown, a lot of us are doing this kind of stuff now, and just adding another action, pulsing a hose, made it much more effective. And add another action is one of the fundamental ways of overcoming insufficiency. Solving contradictions, very fundamental to human thinking. We've got lots of things that have been around for thousands of years, like umbrellas that are small and big. And if we want to create something that's like that, we simply use these 40 principles. They're very simple, they're very clever, and they're very obvious. Once you see them, you see it all makes sense. So dealing with harm, this is my favorite of all the TRIZ principles. You use the harm to deal with the harm, because the harm is happening during the problem. So this was our Christmas card last year, that mother cannot get everyone's attention because they're all looking at tablets, so she has to text them, using the harm to deal with the harm. So TRIZ, some people say, well, that's not very exciting. It's using sort of old ideas in new ways. Well, if you read any innovation book, that's mostly what it's about. But TRIZ will also help you find new ideas to use in new ways too. But 90% of problem solving, like Mr. Dyson using really old technology, is about reapplying the really cleverness of humankind in new ways. So what we've got out in the world is we've got wonderful toolkits for problem understanding, wonderful toolkits for solutions, and they all come from the Denning stable. And in the middle, there's a big gap. But brainstorming is great. It works at least 60% of the time. But when it doesn't work and people are completely stuck, then you need something else. And that's where TRIZ comes in, although I would always say start with TRIZ. And TRIZ will give you a complete system of structured innovation. And in all the webinars that are about at the moment, there was one from LBS this week saying all creativity, all innovation is spontaneous. It's not, it's systematic. And the Russians have shown us how. So I shouldn't knock brainstorming, because everyone loves it. And when we start talking about a problem, everyone starts doing it. It's fantastic. We love jumping to solutions. So what we do is we give everyone super sticky Post-its, and we say, we're going to talk about the problem. Ideas will occur to you. Don't suppress them. Write them down, because like the team looking at the wheel, everyone has different ideas. And people, you can't stop people thinking of ideas. So once you've got a problem, everyone thinks of a different answer, and that's a very important resource, which we should always capture. So in all those ideas, there's something good. And generally, when you get to the end of problem solving, you have combined everyone's ideas together. So what we do in Oxford Creativity is we say, you're going to write your idea down on a post-it and you're going to call it a bad solution, because there'll be something good about it and something bad. You will be able to tell everyone what's good about it. They'll tell you what's wrong with it. So some people call them ugly babies because it's like your baby. You think your baby is the most beautiful thing in the world and everyone else isn't quite so sure. But once you've seen your solution, unless you write it down, you won't see anything else. You won't be able to even listen to the problem. So it's very important that you capture all your solutions, let go of them, and then park them. So your solution has got all your experience and all your genius in there. And when we're problem solving together, what we want is we want to capture everyone's experience. We want everyone to contribute, but all solutions are good and bad. So we created something called the bad solution part, and I would urge you to use this even when you're in lockdown in your own study by yourself. Stick a piece of paper down, write bad solution part, and when you're thinking about anything, just put your solutions down on it and don't try and develop them. Just park them. Parking them is keeping them safe. And what's really important is when you're in a team and live problem solving is there's always one very pushy person, sometimes the most senior person, who's trying to get everyone to run with their solution and develop it rather than step back and say, which way should we go now? And so what the bad solution stops is this kind of behavior. Nobody dominates or pitches their ideas to others, and nobody forces people to waste time heading off in the wrong direction. And if you start problem solving on the wrong thing, the more you do, the further you've got from the really good solutions. So no time wasting. So our bad solution parks are very much about getting everyone to contribute. It ensures that we don't start with a premature solution and head off in the wrong direction. Everyone is involved, and it's very efficient. And so at the end of problem solving, people say, if we'd done this without TRIZ, we'd have spent all day brainstorming. We do the brainstorming in about 30 minutes. And then once we've done the brainstorming, we move on to the real problem solving, which is with TRIZ. But those ideas are important. They're a resource. They allow everyone to contribute and everyone's ideas to come through. And they also show us where you've got to, but they keep everyone on track with the process because people don't sort of run off and try and develop their own ideas. So the logic of problem solving is very simply that we're trying to find a way of understanding needs and meeting them with a system or process. And that's all problem solving is. It took me a while to see that it's just two things. So we've got some kind of system, set of needs. TRIZ aim is to get those to match exactly. Nothing excessive in your system, nothing insufficient, nothing mismatching, but match it exactly. That is sustainable, that's sufficient. And the bad solution part will have our first ideas. And those first ideas will have some idea of needs, incomplete capture of needs, and their system will meet it insufficiently. So that solution will be in the right direction, but it will be just the starting point. And so a problem is simply a gap between the system we want, and cars are not popular at the moment, between the system we have. I think some of them are looking more like this now. And so closing that gap is really important. So all problems are a gap between the system we've got and the needs. And what we're trying to do is pull those closer together. So traditional problem solving generally just moves the system we've got to some kind of system we want, takes them a bit closer. Still some problems, but it gets rid of them. But with TRIZ, that is the next tool we do after the bad solution part, is that we issue everyone with a magic wand. We say, if you had a magic wand, what would your solution look like? What is your ideal system? And Altshuler said you should start all problem solving at the end. Lift your head, forget about the current system. Say, what do we really, really want here? And gives such clarity. And again, it's a very fast and effective tool. So instead of just sort of, hoping you're going to get somewhere on the journey, TRIZ says, let's define the ultimate point we want to be at, the ideal system. And this is a really, really important tool in TRIZ, going to the ideal. And when I hand out the magic wands, people look very worried. They think they're serious problem solvers and what they're doing with these naff plastic ones. But then go back and problem solve with them and they go, this is the best tool. Except the army, the senior people in the army wouldn't pick up. So the ideal system, another TRIZ element is that you use available resources. So we do lots of work with Highways England and their main suppliers. We've done lots on road signs. And a TRIZ solution to a road sign would be whatever problem is occurring will help you create the road sign. So if you want to tell people the roads are icy, could you use ice? And it sounds a bit wacky and agricultural, but actually there are signs now that you can only see telling you it's slippery or icy when it's cold. It needs the cold to activate the sign. So using these resources, very clever. It means that there's much less human intervention. And using resources is fundamental to TRIZ. I suspect it's a very Russian way of approaching problems. It means that we save a lot of money and we have to find very clever solutions. We have to look at every system and say, what's in there that can help us get everything we want? And transporting big bells used to be a problem. The shape made a big difference. So this is very famous in the nudge theory, but we've had this long before the man won the Nobel Prize for nudge, and it cuts cleaning down by 30%. So there is something in the interaction between the user and the system that can help give you what you want without adding any more money or any complication. Never seen this one working. And this is a rather silly British one, that when the Queen's in, the flag's up at Buckingham Palace. So this is just the idea of resources as information. The milkman can see how many pints to leave. So there are lots of wonderful TRIZ tools out there. The one that really helps you think like a genius is thinking in time and scale, which helps you see the big picture, the details, the past and the present, all simultaneously. It's called talented thinking. And after we've done our bad solution part and our ideal, we then do our context in time and scale. But I'm running out of time now, Michael, so just think there's a lot of...
Oh, you've got a few more minutes. Get to the end of them.
Okay, so TRIZ really helps you lift your head. Everything we've been talking about so far is very much about getting you to break out of your normal way of thinking and use these wonderful TRIZ tools. So instead of not seeing what's right in front of your eyes, TRIZ really helps you see what you need to do and how to get there. So people say to me, well, problem solving, it's fragmented, it's crowded, there's too many toolkits. Why do we need Oxford TRIZ as well? And I say, well, all those toolkits, they illuminate different parts of the process. But if you add TRIZ, then it's like the lights come on and you can not only understand what you're doing and the journey you're on, but you use your other toolkits better. And that's what everyone says to us. We do a lot of TRIZ and Lean, TRIZ and Agile. And it's really, and people say, now all the gaps are closed. I can really see how to use all my toolkits. So TRIZ, it's quick. You can learn it in a few days. We teach it in 5 days. On lockdown, we're teaching it in 10 hours. We do 5-day courses. Our problem solving is, again, very quick, 1 to a few days. And we have never seen it fail. So the excitement of it is that you go in, you're feeling a bit embarrassed because you're not an expert. You don't know anything about their subject. They're the experts. And so unlike other consultants, we don't ask them questions and go away and come back with an answer. We just drive TRIZ through what they're doing and the experience they've got, which makes it so fast and so efficient. And more than that, it's exciting because they find the answers. And actually, you're not excited by other people finding a solution for you. If you find it yourself, particularly if you've been stuck, then it's a very exciting moment and you will drive that solution forward. So that's what we do. So I think that's the last slide, Michael. Did I come in the 20 minutes?
Karen, that is fantastic. You've really conveyed the enthusiasm behind TRIZ. TRIZ is a whiz, or whatever. We've got a whole bunch of comments and questions, and the audience really are excited. I'll pick up one. Somebody's leading you on this. Ian Sheridan. He's saying, could you talk a little bit, please, just a little bit, about the use by Formula One and NASA of TRIZ?
Okay, well, it's very humbling when you look at NASA's problems and the Russian space program, how Russia came up with some really amazing TRIZ solutions. They used TRIZ. So the Americans had a problem with their heat shield. The tiles were falling off. The vibration at launch was shaking them off. And the Russians said that if we used a magic wand and said, what do we really want? What we want is a heat shield that just appears at the moment of re-entry. We don't need it before that. And what we'd like to do is use really cheap and available resources. And so what the Russians did is they used tar and cork, because they said the conditions at re-entry, which are lots of heat from the friction and low oxygen, could create a heat shield. And they picked up a technology that's as old as the woods around us, which is making charcoal. So that cork became charcoal under the conditions of re-entry of the low oxygen and the heat. And there's so many examples like that of really clever ideas coming through, amazingly cheap, amazingly effective, and just following the TRIZ rules.
Well, Ian is obviously quite a fan because he attended your course, he notes here. And he asked an open question you don't need to answer. It's good advertising, but given the trend of more online courses, is there scope for financial services sector workers to receive online TRIZ training this month or in June? I think we know the answer to that one.
Well, our next live learning starts on May the 11th. It's just 2 hours a day for 5 days. Look at our website.
Great. Now, Bob McDowell asked an interesting question, well, two actually. Is TRIZ evolutionary or fixed principles form a toolkit?
This is a really hard one because, those of my children who've done PhDs say, thing about TRIZ, Mum, we've lost all the original research. So is it a fixed point that they've discovered this in the 1940s and 50s and we haven't moved on? What we find is it works, and people who do the analysis with today's computer tools find that there are only 40 ways of solving a contradiction, although people are longing to find the 41st or even the 42nd, which would be very exciting. The 8 trends, they are so conceptual and general that they still apply, even though technology's moved on. I do find it amazing that the TRIZ community back in the 50s was saying everything is moving towards nanotechnology. Everything is moving to less human involvement, which are just 2 of the 8 trends. So what I'd like to see in my lifetime is somebody start researching TRIZ. MIT and Imperial, the James Dyson Design Engineering Department, they were teaching it. I know that there's been lots of work at MIT, but just university to do some work on this. It would probably answer the question better than I can.
I see this as a sort of related as well from V. Kong. Is it right to say that TRIZ helps you to get your vision, and Agile, the development method, takes you there in a step-by-step manner?
Yes. It always astonishes me with the other toolkits. You've got step by step, very written everything down, and then suddenly, boom, brainstorm here. It's all gone random. And so TRIZ will link with it. There will be some overlap. So if you're doing your ideal outcome, you're thinking about what you want, or specify your requirements, and on problem development, solution development rather, it really helps. But it's the way that, because all these toolkits have this hole in the middle, that by making them complete, you see how to use them better. Certainly the people I work with on Lean and Agile feel a bit like the Bucks County Council team. There's a point where you really need to use these tools, and they're pointing you in the right direction. You need to be more efficient. You need to get rid of waste. But then sometimes you need to do the complete opposite, the other way around, which is TRIZ principle number 13. You need to actually try something completely different, so that when you've done everything that toolkit can show you, then TRIZ will take you somewhere else like the Bucks County Council. Instead of trying to save money, let's see if we can earn it.
Now, Bob actually asked a bit of a supplementary one. Is TRIZ more effectively used and does it have more impact in times of crisis? Or is it more a tactical tool, or is it a strategic tool?
It's certainly a strategic tool. The thing is that when you need a tactical tool, a strategic tool, when you're stuck or you can't see the ways forward, it's generally because all the options are bad. They say even the most decisive people are indecisive when only faced with bad options. So what TRIZ does is it helps you get rid of the bad or find a better option. So it works in all those situations. In the current crisis, we've been working, our teams, my TRIZ experts have been working this week on a system that's very old, which kills viruses in a room. Porton Down have recently done research on it. It costs about £100. I've just installed one in my kitchen, and we are working with an Oxford company to try and get these out. If only Mr. Trump had talked about ozone and not bleach, I think he might have both saved the world and possibly his
possibly a few lives. Yeah, it's interesting. Christopher Gleendal wanted you to expand on that, so thank you. Another interesting bit here is well, actually on that one, do you want to just go just a little bit more detail, or as much as you can, on what the method is? I mean, we've all heard about disinfectants, so what's so special about removing viruses from a room?
Well, I've learned quite a lot about this. I've been hanging around with some Oxford professors who kept giving a snort of contempt every time I talked about TRIZ, but then began to see that it would really help. So we know about cleaning bacteria off surfaces, and there's lots of old knowledge about that. So the reason we had silver cutlery was because silver will destroy bacteria. We used to have silver stethoscopes for doctors because bacteria can't live on them. But if you saw a bacteria and it was the size of a beach ball, the virus would be the size of a pea next to it. Viruses are a completely different size, so you have to deal with them in a different way. And one of the problems with viruses is porosity. So cardboard is really good at holding viruses in because it's got really porous surface. And so there's lots of work going on at the moment to get very smooth surfaces so we can wipe the viruses off better. This system we've been working on this week is about is just something that exists in a lot of places anyway. Air cleaners that use ozone with a chemical process to transform the ozone actually kills all the viruses in the room. So it doesn't matter how small they are. It's not a case of wiping them or trying to reach them with some kind of gel. It actually breaks their sort of surface. I'm not a chemist, and they are destroyed. So, and this technology started in the 1800s, but because it's based on ozone, and ozone has always been public domain, there has been no IP that the big pharmaceutical companies could develop and make enough money on it. So although ozone is known to be wonderful of killing off germs in your wounds and doing all kinds of things, it hasn't been considered. But I'm hoping that the Porton Down research and the others will bring it to the fore, because these machines are really cheap and you can install them in your house. And if you can be confident that you've killed all the viruses, no matter how porous the material, then it's one solution that we need in today's world.
Well, there's quite a few here. I'm going to try and wrap up a few in the next 3 or 4 minutes. Firstly, though, there's a teensy bit of advertising. Timothy Coleman writes, this kind of design thinking and visual scribing is what he was trying to do with the website. I didn't realize there was already so much developed. Maybe I should run TRIZ instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. So I'll put you in touch with Timothy separately and offline. Got an interesting set of questions from Roger James. Can TRIZ deal with approaches to localization as a response for climate and COVID control? But he goes on, the ideal outcome is a local supply chain. How can TRIZ help? Is TRIZ biased towards central or local solutions?
Well, the people I learned from initially, who were Russian, said that we need to get away from this, and something will happen in the world to force us back to localization. And why not? I mean, the company I'm working with in Oxford on these virus killers, their factory is empty because they moved all their manufacturing to China. They're now reopening. And so I think that we're going to see lots of good things happening in the world in terms of local communities. Globalization has many, many advantages, but it's a contradiction. There's good things and bad things about it. And I think we've lost a lot of the good things. So there would be nothing wrong with localization. I much prefer it. Certainly TRIZ has in the 9-box tool, the thinking in time and scale, it's about thinking what's appropriate to do at the supersystem, the system, and the subsystems. So the subsystems is very much about localization. So there are toolkits which encourage you at times to go down to the subsystem and localize, and at other times go up to the supersystem and really globalize. So it will give you the appropriate prompts at the appropriate time.
Elaine Ray has a punchy little question here. Do your clients always know their problem, or can TRIZ be used to look at wider ways of working?
No. You don't start with a problem. You start with a problem mess, and that's one of the reasons of starting with the ideal. So I was doing some work on escape systems from submarines, which really don't exist at all. And we got to the ideal, and I waved the magic wand and said, so what's the ideal solution here, that we get to the surface instantly? And they said, no, we get home having our tea, because TRIZ really helps you scope the whole problem much better. And even something as simple as just doing the ideal helps you do that. So there are many solutions to any problem, and you don't understand the problem until you've done at least 10 steps in TRIZ. So we've got, we start with our ideal, we map it functionally, and then we come up with a problem list, and you solve the problems one at a time. And in every situation, when we're working with people, they go, oh, that's where the problem is. And they've quite often been working in the wrong area, but we don't start by problem solving. We start with problem mapping so that they can really see where they should be. And we do that in a day. The idea of TRIZ is it's very fast.
Well, I'm very fastly trying to match questions. We've got time probably just for 2 more comments from you. Martin Watkins is interested in, is there a way in which TRIZ can identify that users are using the wrong set of complementary methods and toolkits? For example, firms using lean where it was not appropriate. Does TRIZ inform users on their use of tools? And in an oddly related way, Vladimir Dimitrov is asking, has anybody done some comparative analysis with other problem-solving frameworks, e.g. lateral thinking, design thinking?
Okay, all those are very important. The thing about a lot of toolkits like lean is you get your head down to really into the knitting and, get it right. With TRIZ, you're lifting your head up. So there's a moment to be sort of into the detail, and then there's an appropriate moment to bring TRIZ in. We work with a lot of lean teams, and quite often they've just been going in the wrong direction, like the Bucks County Council people. They're just trying to save money, whereas in fact they should be earning it. The other way round, principle number 13 is the most popular TRIZ principle. It does link with there's a lot of creativity and innovation tools, which to me look like a toy box compared to the very serious toolkits that are out there. And creativity and innovation shouldn't be limited to toy boxes of prompts. Simple little prompts, wonderful things, and they do work, but they are not systematic. And I find it amazing that so many people feel that systematic and innovation, or systematic and creativity, don't go together. The Russians have shown how it does. And the wonderful thing about TRIZ is it was developed in isolation. All toolkits come from Denning, and they're all kind of from one stable. TRIZ has come from somewhere completely different and does different things, but complements them. You need both. That great hole where all the other toolkits stop and say brainstorm, that's where you put TRIZ. It will help you with some of the other stages too, but it's just unique. It's the only thing that fills that gap.
And a final question, and I'm going to ask you to be a bit punchy on the reply here, because it's a bit barbed. There is a lot of skepticism in financial services about the application of manufacturing techniques. And if you go back about 15 years ago, everybody had rediscovered Six Sigma. And Six Sigma does have applications in certain areas of financial services and has been successful. But across the board, it's a bit of a busted flush. So Johnny Fry is asking, what business sectors have you seen work best using TRIZ? And is it really better for manufacturing rather than services?
It works on anything, but it works best on clever people. And in financial services, you've got a lot of clever people. So, if you want to sort of magnify your brain power and find the best ways forward, whatever you're doing. I mean, I worked with Oxford University last year on International Women's Day on how to get more women into IT. I've worked with my local cathedral on sorting out the Friends organization. It works on anything, but if you're clever and you've got a clear idea of where you're going to, then TRIZ will just multiply your brain power and organize yourself. You've got 2 good hours a day of thinking, and if you use TRIZ during those 2 good hours, you will achieve so much. It's just transformed. I mean, I've got an MBA, I've got an engineering degree, but nothing has helped me as much as TRIZ.
Well, Karen, that's been fantastic. Your enthusiasm shines forth. And that's got to be one of the most paradoxical sales techniques I've ever seen. If you're not using TRIZ, you're not intelligent. I think that's what you said.
No,
it works best on smart people. Yes, I liked that a lot.
But best on the clever you are, the more effect you'll have. So if you think you're clever, you need TRIZ.
No, I like that a lot. Folks, the usual obligatory advertising. The webinars continue. Next week, we've got some fascinating stuff on Monday. Doug McWilliams and his brother Mike went across the Silk Road, but as economists, they traveled in a great, nice automobile and made a lot of observations. A good follow-up to our Belt Road talk the other week, where we look at first quarter results, which were most intriguing from Henry Tillman. And then we've also got a wonderful and interesting session on climate and COVID-19. And that's going to be given by Sean Kidney, who heads up the Climate Bonds Initiative. So be there, be square, whatever. It's going to be a lot of fun. Karen, it remains for me to join with the audience. You've fired them up. Lots and lots of things here. And I'm going to say basically a virtual thank you to you from all of them out there. I'm now going to sadly have to turn the recording off and say goodbye to everybody. Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you.